Oh, this way, Rob.
Yo. So, today, agenda. The only new thing we're going to talk about is code formatting. We're going to review functions, continue to work on Friday's assignment. If you have any questions, we can continue to help you out. So, keep in mind, assignment 4 is due on Wednesday. That's calculating the area of different shapes using functions. Test 1 is next Wednesday, which is not 8. That should be a 10. 7:15 help night. So one thing that I haven't told you yet is that, well, it hasn't necessarily happened every single week, but there is usually a help night every Monday from 4:15 to 6 in East Hall 105. So if you want somebody else who's not me or one of your classmates to help you out with the programming assignment, you can just show up in East Hall 105 at 4:15 to 6, and they can... If you let me know that you're going to be there, I might stop by, but I usually wouldn't.
Can we have a private study session?
No, you may not. No. Go away. Go away. Down.
Only people who've never been
down.
So, and then
people that have never been above a .1.
there's guys. And then there's also a session Thursday at 7:30 to 9 p.m. So, if you need extra help with your homework or think you could do better if somebody else explained a concept to you, stop in at that time. So, about test 1. So I'll be posting a list of vocabulary and terminology. Shouldn't be too hard. I might ask, what is this component of a printf statement called? Or what is this block of code called? Or what does the ls command do? Or what are the editors we've talked about in class? Or what are the data types we've talked about in class? And what I should end up doing is posting a list of about 20 questions, and then I will randomly select from those 20 questions which questions will actually be on the test. So if you recall, test 1 we'll spend half of the hour essentially working on taking a quiz in D2L, and in the second half of the hour we'll be writing a program during class. So just keep that in mind. As soon as I post that up, you'll be responsible for going in there and make sure that you're familiar with all the terminology. So I want to talk about code formatting really quick. One of the things that starts to come up a lot, that it becomes very important when we're dealing with functions, is code formatting. So when I look at something like this, that's just a huge jumbled block of code. And there's a couple things that we can do a lot better in this code to make it more readable, to make it easier for other people to read it, and to understand the logic that's going on. So essentially, some things that you should keep in mind when formatting your code, you should indent your code a level for each block of code you enter. So when I say indent, I mean either push the tab key or push the spacebar a certain number of times that you decide is going to be your level of indentation. So if I have a... So if I have a function, let's say like this, then everything inside the function should be indented one level. So I would either just push tab, I'd push space 2 times, or something like that. I personally prefer pushing tab just because it's a little more consistent. Let's say we were in Nano, and I did something like tab. One thing that you can do, or what should happen, is when you tab out one level in Nano and go on to the next line, Nano will automatically keep you at that same level of indentation. So it's not set up on my Nano because I don't use it, but the way I set up your Nano, it should keep your level of indentation the same. So when you're inside a block, just indent one level. So that goes the same for our mains. So I'll just close here. So inside our main block, we should have that all inside. We should have that all indented a single level like that. And the same for if statements. So just think, if we're inside a set of brackets, we should be indenting one more level than the previous time. So when we get down to our if statements here, so now that we're in 2 sets of brackets, we should indent 2 times. So that's just kind of indentation. So Another thing is we should try and keep all of our brackets on new lines. So when we have a function like calc_tax or something like this, we want to just try and put that bracket on a new line. It just makes the function a lot more understandable. You know exactly that it's a function. That's not as important as indentation. Indentation is really key, and if you don't indent your code, I'm probably going to take points off. Probably just one. It's not that big of a deal, but it's important. Same goes for main. You should also keep that bracket on a new line, and same goes for if statements. Let's just, instead of doing something like this, let's just try and keep it all on new lines. So this is essentially how that would go. So the third thing is you should have a blank line after each function or if statement group. So when I'm writing this function, or I'm writing a bunch of different functions up at the top, you should put a new line between the first function you have and the second function you have. So just split out the functions with a new line. It's pretty straightforward, but it just helps us differentiate between the different functions that we're working on. And the final thing is that your variable names should all follow a pattern. So either lowercase the first, or when you're building your variable names, you could either put all of the words together essentially and delimitate them with a uppercase first letter of each word, or you could do an underscore or something like that. So either decide that you're going to do what we call camel case, I think that's called camel case, the first one, right? And then say lowercase first word and then uppercase the first letter of each subsequent word, or do, I think this is like pearl case or something, I don't know what it doesn't really matter what it's called, but uppercase the first letter of each word throughout, or do underscores and separate your words by underscores, but just try and keep it consistent. So so here, notice I always lowercase the first word, then uppercase the first letter of the second word. So just decide which way you want to label or name your variables and try and keep it consistent. So yeah, that's for the basic code formatting. So there's actually a way you can just completely modify your file just to magically indent it perfectly. So I've set it up so you can say format and then your file name, and it'll print out your code perfectly formatted. So let's say I said format unformatted. It'll print out my code formatted, right? So that will just print it out, but you can also do format-I, and it will format your code and save the changes in line. So -I. So there's no output from that, but if I open up my C file, you can see that it's been formatted. So the only thing that the format command will do is it will indent and it will put brackets on new lines. It'll also add some spaces around operators and some other things, but you'll still have to name your variables the same way, and you'll have to add the spaces between functions. So just keep in mind, formatting is really important. So C doesn't care how we format the code, but we want to format it in a good way to ensure that it's readable by me and readable by you, so you know where you're at in your code and you understand what's going on. I hinted at it before, but if your code isn't indented, I'm probably going to take a point or two off the assignment. I can on my end run it through the formatter and fix it, but it's about I want you to become familiar with working with good formatted code. So back to functions really quick. I'm just going to run through the same thing I ran through on Wednesday and Friday again. Yell at me if we don't know what's going on or if there's any questions about functions. So recall that our basic function template says return type, then function name, and then parameter list. So we specify our return type is int, char, float, or void. Remember that void returns nothing, so there's no return statements necessarily inside our function bracket. The function simply ends and performs actions inside the block. So then we give our function a name. It can be anything that starts with a. So for names, the requirements are it has to start with a letter, We can have numbers inside of it, but the first character does have to be a letter, if I recall correctly. I think you can also make an underscore, but minor details. And then recall our parameter list. We specify which variables we want the function to accept. So we have to say data type, and then variable name, comma, data type, variable name, so on and so forth. And then we can perform any statements inside the function block. So this is kind of the template for the add function. So we say our return type is integer, we say our function name is add, we say our first parameter is A and our second parameter is B, and then we finally return C. So working that into main, just follow the red and the green. So red A is going to be 1. We pass in 1 to our add function. That initializes variable A inside our add function and sets it equal to 1. So at this point, A right here is 1, and then we come back here. We say B is equal to 2. We pass B into our add function. Right at the beginning of our function, it initializes B to 2, and then we say 1 plus 2 equals 3, stored in C, return C. So when we return from our function, that essentially means that we're going to store whatever we returned from this function inside the variable left of the equal sign. So this is read as add, or call the add function, and then store the result in res, and we print out res. So recall that we can return a literal variable, we can return the result of an operation, we can return a combination of both. So going back up to add the add function, we don't necessarily have to declare this int C, we could just say return A plus B. We would never have to declare a variable in the meantime. So I went over it on Wednesday, but just again a couple of the tips. When using functions, your variables that you declare inside the functions or pass into the functions, don't modify anything outside of the function or remain after you call the function. So let's say I have a function and I set int C equal to A the next time, and I call that function. And the next time I call that function, I set it to A again, but A has a different value. Those values that we establish inside the functions aren't persistent through multiple function calls. So they're going to disappear after we have done, after we finish calling the function. So look at the tips in, I believe, day 13 PowerPoint, the one from on Wednesday, if you are still kind of confused about how things are working in the functions. Talk about returning again. So we're just going to continue working on the assignment from Friday. Otherwise, if you have any questions about that, have any questions about assignment 4, if you have already submitted assignment 4 or the assignment from in class on Friday without it being properly indented, I'd like you to go back through, use the format command to indent that and add new lines after your functions and then resubmit it again. So, any questions right off the bat? Cole? Yeah, well, I'll come around. Any general questions that you think, any areas of functions you want me to spend more time on right now? Yep. So just the, all right, so I can go ahead and just write the hello function real quick here. Hello function is meant to be one of the most straightforward functions that we're going to write in our assignment. So essentially, remember that when we don't have anything returning from our function is just doing work, we just say void, and we can call it hello. It takes no parameters, all it does is work. It doesn't modify any data or do any calculations. Left parenthesis, right parenthesis. So that's our basic function template. We've set our data type, our function name, and our parameters. So inside that, the two ways that we can print out, we can either say puts or we can say printf. I'll say puts because I like puts. And we'll just say hello. And that's essentially all you need to put for the hello function. So if I say hello down here, when we've executed all the statements above it, the statements will execute from top to bottom, remember, and we'll go down, 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 down. And when we hit hello, we'll jump up to the top of hello, right here. We'll execute all the statements inside hello, and then when we hit the closing bracket, program execution will jump back and continue after hello. So if there's any statements after hello, then our program execution will continue. So did that help at all? All right then.